All right, welcome everyone to episode 21 of Paperboy Ventures. Today we are joined by Juan Giraldo, the co-founder and CEO of Waku Tea. Juan, welcome to the pod.
Great to be here, Kyle.
Glad to have you. Thanks for joining. And like we do with every episode, let's get right to it. Hit us with the elevator pitch. What are you building over there at Waku?
Yeah, so Waku is the new generation of tea. We bring pop and fun to the traditional ready-to-drink tea category. Same sweet, refreshing, fruity taste as the iced teas you probably grew up drinking, but instead of 50 grams of sugar, only 3 to 4. Instead of 160 calories, only 25 to 30, and 5 grams of prebiotic fiber to maximize for gut health benefits.
Well said. Okay, so a new generation of tea. Would love to hear you kind of compare that to the teas that we grow up on. What's different about what you're doing there?
Yeah, so I think it goes fourfold. Number one is remove all the sugars. I mean, remove so the tea category is $8 billion in the US alone, and most of the leading brands have up to 60 grams of sugar. So think about Arizona, Snapple, Pure Leaf, Gold Peak, Lipton, Joe's Tea in the Northeast. When you look at their cans, they literally have more than 200% of your suggested daily intake of sugar. And so we think that the new generation consumer doesn't want that. They want the taste, they want the fruits, they want the sweet, but without the sugar. And hence, inherently, since they have so much sugar, they also have a tremendous amount of calories, going up to 250 calories per bottle. And so, those two things, in addition to just being brewed with artificial ingredients. And so we do the exact opposite. We just kept the taste fruity, refreshing, sweet, but removed all the sugar. So we have 3 to 4 grams of sugar that comes actually from the fruit that we use in the product. And then we sweeten with natural sweeteners such as monk fruit and stevia leaf extract. Only 25 to 30 calories that comes from fruit and fiber. And then we use only natural ingredients, which a part of them are sourced from independent farmers in Ecuador, where I grew up, and where we have a social impact program that is benefiting the lives of multiple families down there. And then add to that, prebiotic fiber that maximizes gut health benefits. 95% of American consumers have a fiber deficient diet. And if you drink a can of Waku in 12 ounces, you have 20% of your suggested daily intake there to complement what you're already taking.
Gotcha. Okay, so it sounds like the new generation in your mind is building the healthier, better for you option versus the teas that we grew up drinking, at least here in the US. And would it be fair to say you are taking a similar approach to what these better for you sodas have done in the carbonated soft drinks category, but to tea?
Yeah, I think that the prebiotic soda brands are a great source of inspiration, and they paved the way to show the industry and the rest of us what can be done if you really connect with the new generation consumers and the attributes that consumers like you and I are looking for. And so definitely we see them as a source of inspiration. We like what they've done in terms of brand building as well, because product is one piece of it, but then the brand, how you build the brand, is the other piece, and both of them have been young and fun and connected with the younger generation. And that's definitely something that when we went through the rebrand last year, we thought about that since the very beginning that we started working on the project. Is the ready to drink tea category, usually you look at the commercial, it's all about the quality of the tea leaves and how good it is. It's very traditional on the way they market the brands. And so we wanted to twist that 180 degrees and make it more pop, fun, irreverent. And that's showing up on how we're building our brand.
Got it. All right. So basically, you've built the better for you product, which is, I would say, more or less table stakes at this point, and then you're pairing that with the
Yeah,
brand that pushes off against the category and sets you guys apart versus who your competition is.
absolutely. And it starts with the way the product looks. So when you look at the cans, it definitely say pop, fun, fruity, tasty. and then the entire brand world around that is speaking to that.
Yeah, makes sense. And before we go down that path, I know you've been through quite a bit with this business, and you've changed packaging types, you've rebranded, you've launched numerous major accounts, mostly in the Northeast, it sounds like. But I do want to start with you and your background and kind of how you arrived at this place to build Waku. And a little bit of context for our audience here. So Juan and I first met back in, was it like 2018, 2019, maybe
2019,
2019.
19, yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So we were both running our startups through an accelerator in Boston, and that's where we first met. And I first learned about the brand. And recently we were catching up about the business, and honestly, it just made all the sense in the world to have Juan and Waku on Paperboy with the way that the business is building and growing. And even friendship aside, I see this as something that is unique in the space, has a real shot to scale, and it's an interesting story. So, credit to you, and I'll say this in the most complimentary way possible. You're a cockroach. You refuse to die, which I do think is one of the most important traits that you can have, especially in early stage beverage, because it's a grind. So, yeah, would love to hear if you could just start maybe back in Ecuador. I know that's your roots and where your entrepreneurial background came from. So just talk to us about what you were doing prior to Waku that led to this.
absolutely. In so many war stories, Kyle, to share. But so me and my co-founder Nico, we both grew up in Ecuador, in South America, and in 2016 we left what we were doing. So we were both running an edtech startup, very different industry, very different company. We were training Latin American engineers how to use Oracle database systems. And so we basically would get content from new databases from Oracle in the US. We would translate them into Spanish, and we would hire instructors, put that content on demand. And then we were selling it all over Latin America. We were minority shareholders in that business, and we exited that business to pay for our MBAs, basically, if you will. And so in 2016, we had this big dream of moving to the States, going to school as a trampoline to get into the startup scene in Boston specifically, and with the whole goal of building and scaling a company that could have a positive impact in Ecuador while we scaled it. And so we spent 2 years of the MBA understanding consumer trends, understanding the CPG space, and learning as much as we could about the industry. And at the same time, we learned that reduction of sugar was happening, elimination of sugar was happening, gut health benefits were growing, more research and science behind it, correlation with immunity and well-being. And at the same time, we just wanted to support the farmer population in Ecuador. So just to give you some reference, 30% of the Ecuadorian population are farmers, and 40% of them live below the poverty line, 20% of them live below extreme poverty line. And so there is a lot of opportunities to help this set of the population in Ecuador. And we thought that if we could set up a business in the States that sources these ingredients from Ecuador, market size in the US is huge, right? I mean, this is the biggest market in the world. We could have a real solid positive impact back home, regardless of building and overseas. And so that was the premise. We didn't know what we didn't know. We just started learning about it. It took us, maybe 3 to 4 iterations to get to where we are right now. Major, brand iterations and product iterations. We started very different product, very different positioning, very different category. We just didn't know what we were. And I think it's normal to go through that process when you're a first time CPG entrepreneur, beverage entrepreneur. And one thing that I always like to tell people who are starting now is that when you come from tech, iteration and pivoting is very simple because you don't have any inventory on your warehouse. You don't have 100,000 labels and 100,000 bottles there that need to be used. Whereas in consumer packaged goods, iterations are painful. And that was something that we learned the hard way while we were making progress on the business. To your point, I think the mission of the company, the purpose, the reason why we started is so bigger than ourselves, so much bigger than ourselves, that when the times got rough, we just didn't quit. We knew we were onto something. We were learning. I mean, we're just both Nico and I is students of business, and we're relentless on improving ourselves in the business. And so we knew we were making progress. We just needed more time. And so we hold on to it, and now we're here.
Yeah, it's grit. I think is the first word that comes to mind, and perseverance, and just knowing the things that you've been through here. I want to stick to the product for a second, and I know you went through a number of iterations to get to the formulas that you have today. So, would love to know is are you still sourcing these ingredients from Ecuador? How did you arrive at the formulation? Were you working with anybody down there, or can you just speak to how you got to the current product?
Sure thing. So the inspiration of the product comes from a traditional recipe in the south of Ecuador, Kyle. So when you look at our ingredient list, uh, it's very different from the teas out there because we use a combination of an herbal blend, a combination of herbal teas that get to the product. So we use herbs like chamomile, mint, lemon balm, lemongrass, lemon verbena, and this is one of the most popular drinks in the south of Ecuador that has been used for centuries because of gut health benefits and great taste. And so we use that as the inspiration of the brand. Uh, Initially we even positioned it and marketed as that, as an herbal elixir from the Andes Mountains, which did not work out whatsoever. And so we did have that as an inspiration, and then we hired a food scientist to to scale up that recipe, right? And initially, we were manufacturing the product in Ecuador. And so, with the years, we started pivoting and tweaking on that recipe. But the very essence of it, which is the use of all these herbs that are sourced from independent farmers in the south of Ecuador, is there. And so it's something that we're very proud of. As of today, we work with about 13 families of farmers down there. We're still early. I think there's an opportunity to have a tremendous impact on thousands of farmer families back home as we scale this brand. um, then during COVID, we learned how painful it can be to have long supply chains, and we made the decision to bring manufacturing domestically in the U.S., but still source the herbs from the farmers down there.
Gotcha. So you've been able to stick to your original mission of supporting farmers down in Ecuador while morphing the supply chain a bit to make the business more economical here in the States.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, look, everything that we do has the mission, the purpose of the business front and center. I mean, the name of the company is Waku, which actually means together in Quechua, which is the most widely spoken language of indigenous people in the Andes Mountains. And so we started with that name because we blend these herbs together and because we work together with these farmers back home. I think that keeps us grounded. But obviously, we are building a very what will be a very successful business. We care deeply about gross margins. We care deeply about profitability, and so at some point we learned that it just made more business sense to bring manufacturing domestically as closer as the consumer as possible to the consumer as possible, and it made sense because minimum order quantities to start in Ecuador were very low, so that helped us get off the ground. But now that we have enough volume to be appealing for a multi-year contract to a co-packer, then we switch here, and that has been very beneficial to our cost of goods sold.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. It's one thing to have a mission behind the brand, but it needs to be a business at the end of the day. So you need to make those
That's it.
decisions that actually keep the lights on. And it's a nice segue, I think, into the packaging discussion. And I know you've thought about this for hours and hours, and you used to be in glass, you switched to aluminum cans. Would love to hear kind of your thinking behind that and what you've learned in that move.
Yeah, so we actually have done it all, Kyle, because we went from glass to plastic and then from plastic to cans. And um, at some point in the early days, we were tied to the manufacturing capabilities that we had in Ecuador. And in Ecuador, there is not we didn't have access to manufacturing cans. Let's just put it that way. And so at some point, glass became cost prohibiting. And so it just didn't make sense from a cost of goods sold perspective. And that's the reason that then we pivoted to plastic. And with plastic, we actually launched Whole Foods. Then very quickly, consumers and even buyers in the natural channel were asking, why plastic? I mean, it just doesn't make sense for a brand like yours targeting the new generation consumer, and they were right. And so we went back to the drawing board, and we saw that aluminum cans were the future. The new generation is very used to drink multiple beverages from water to soda to tea now in cans, and that cost of goods was even better when we moved to cans. And so we made that pivot on June of last year, and that's the packaging that will stay. Now, all of that came with a whole packaging design project, and we had now 18 months in Whole Food Shelf to learn what was working, what wasn't working, and now when you look at our cans, Kyle, I bet you have seen the hierarchy is very straightforward, right? We have, the fruit front and center that looks juicy and fruity and even sweet, I would say, due to the colors of the can. We want that front and center because that was the main reason why consumers were buying the product. And then we also learned that our consumers were not kombucha or soda drinkers. There were mostly tea and water drinkers. And so we decided to put tea, the word of what this product is, big, so consumers can see it from 6 feet apart. After those two, that was what the product is and how is it gonna taste. Then goes the sugar content and the prebiotics for gut health. And so the hierarchy was very um, intentional, if you will, once we went through that rebranding design project.
Yeah, you have the benefit of learning from these retailers that you've been in market with for quite some time, and it's super interesting to think about that of what resonates first, second, third, fourth with consumers. And yeah, I was checking out the packaging just before this podcast, and it's like tea, boom, right in your face, and you
Exactly.
cannot get away from uh, the the boldness of the flavors that you're pushing, and clearly it's by design. And you got to think about it from a consumer standpoint where they only have 2 seconds where they're looking in a
Exactly.
cooler, and you got to communicate that very quickly. So yeah, so I know Whole Foods has kind of been the I don't know, maybe the inspiration of the packaging switch. What are you seeing out there since you've made that switch? Have you seen a rate increase in
Oh
velocities?
yeah.
What's been the word?
Such a big change, Kyle. And one of the best investments we've made is to hire a real good beverage branding agency to come and help us with the packaging. Because once you know what you want and who you are and where you play, you need to hire a professional to help you put that in the can. And so, best investment we've ever made. And velocities pretty much grew 50 to 70% overnight after that switch, quite frankly. And so tremendous impact, and it helps everywhere in your conversations and your commercial relationships. I mean, it helps from a consumer standpoint. That's the main priority, but retailers like it, influencers like it, distributors like it, brokers like it. And so you do need a packaging and a brand that speaks to the entire value chain, if you will, in order to be successful. And so now a lot more organic social media posts, for example, Kyle. That didn't happen before when with our previous branding. It just, the brand wasn't ready to be Instagrammable. And so as soon as we made that switch, we started having organic posts from other people multiple times a week. And so you can tell quickly how much it clicked.
Yeah, it's the point that really I think about a lot in the beverage space too. When you were ranking those attributes, I think you said flavor was number one. The format of tea was number two. Was it low sugar as number
Yep,
three? And
exactly.
then prebiotic, right? So
Prebiotic. Yeah.
prebiotic is so interesting to me because you have these brands like Olipop and Poppy that have completely blown up, and they've kind of been riding that prebiotic wave. Which on one hand, I think a lot of people give that term credit for kind of defining this new generation of sodas. Where on the other hand, honestly, I don't know if people actually care. I think that they might just be drinking it because it's a healthier version of the stuff that they grew up with. So would love to hear your thoughts on prebiotic as a selling point and what you're seeing in the tea space.
So here's what we learned, from consumers is that the majority of consumers don't understand the difference between probiotic and prebiotic. I would say 98% of them, they don't understand that difference. But as soon as they hear prebiotic or probiotic, they know is good for gut health. And that, and as a brand, that's all you need. I mean, because immediately they are associating that attribute to being healthy. Um, and I think Olipop and Poppy are such a masterclass because I feel that early on they lean into the functionality. They niche down, let's call it that way, to the Whole Foods consumer or the natural channel consumer. But you can tell based on their marketing and their communication now that they are going mainstream and they're crossing the chasm. They are leaning on flavor and fun and brand building more than function. And so I think it's the same thing for us. You first need to build a brand that tastes amazing, and that helps people who are watching their weight don't take as many calories and sugar as they would do with other brands. And then you close the loop with function, and function can get you some customers. I mean, it's crazy to think that the job that Olipop and Poppy have done with the younger generation, you see younger consumers pick us up at Whole Foods just because the product has prebiotics and they just want to try it because it has prebiotics. But I think if you really want to take this brand mainstream, it's all about the taste and creating a pop and fun brand that is different from the rest.
I agree, and I think you can use it to appeal to buyers both B2B
Exactly.
and consumers, and it's essentially
Exactly.
it's a proxy for healthy prebiotic, I think, in today's environment. But what's really interesting is we haven't really seen it take off in tea yet. So it has in soda, it hasn't yet in tea. What's your thought on why the tea category is kind of lagging in that
It
realm?
will happen. I think that we're seeing great traction in the market, not only us as a brand, but the subcategory itself. So I think it's just a matter of time. I think the most simplified version of why this should work is because if it worked in an adjacent category such as soda, it should normally work in an adjacent category such as tea. And it just is the players who are now getting into the space is getting shelf space, educating consumers, and putting the work to create this subsegment. And so I'm bullish on what's coming for the category, and I am very excited for us to be positioned as one of the leaders, if not the leader, in this subsegment that can grab some share from the big players by introducing now gut health function into the tea set.
Yeah, I'll say it's a strong theory. I wouldn't have you on here if I didn't somewhat believe in it myself. And I think if it does come true, it's a massive market. So there's not, in my opinion, there's not just going to be one winner. There's going to be multiple that
Yeah,
kind of flip this category. So
yeah,
it's an intriguing one to dig into. All right, so let's chat a little bit about what you're seeing now in the market. So I think you said it was a year ago that you made the switch about into the aluminum cans.
yeah.
Uh, since then, it sounds like you've expanded distribution a little bit in the Northeast, but would love to know kind of where you're at today and what you're seeing out in the market.
Our distribution strategy is actually named Dominate the Northeast for the first 3 years in retail. And so we set that strategy at the beginning of 2024. It will take us until the end of 2026. And the strategy goes across channels of trade. So we're now our anchor or flagship account, if you will, is Whole Foods, where we drive a big chunk of our business, and we're expanding with them this year. But then through this partnership with Rainforest Distribution, we touch multiple channels of trade, including ShopRite, Chico's, Citarella, going up to Boston, Dave's Marketplace, Roach Brothers, etc. The reason why we set up this strategy is because we believe we can build freight and logistics efficiencies when you keep your manufacturing, warehousing, and distribution in a contained geography. And we don't have a massive marketing budget. So by keeping our distribution constrained to a geography and going hard in our marketing in that geography, we can appear to be bigger than we are as a brand. And I think the marketing dollars have a better ROI. And so there is enough here and for us, the goal is to become profitable in the Northeast before raising another round of institutional funding, and then start expanding nationwide with the natural channel first. And so, one thing that we don't like to do, Kyle, is to grow at all costs. We don't do that. We're not that company. So we're very focused on unit economics and taking deals that make sense for the brand. And that might mean that we need to be a little more patient. We're okay with that. We want to build the brand the right way. And so after we dominate the Northeast and turn break even, then is the next round of funding, and then is going, let's go nationwide with Whole Foods, with the Sprouts, and let's follow those DCs, those distribution centers with Defy and Kehi, to start growing from there. Um,
Gotcha. Yeah. So build the full proof of concept in the Northeast geography, and then you replicate that once you get to a point of profitability and have all of your learnings down from those different retailers and channels that you could expand out.
exactly that, and we call it disciplined growth internally. And so we've tested and learned over the years what works, and now it's a matter of what worked in the Northeast. We're going to start replicating that in multiple geographies around the country.
So speaking of that, sorry, speaking of that, I know that your Whole Foods velocity has been excellent, and you're beating the category average by a wide margin. Would love to know, you don't have to give away all your secrets, but how are you pulling this off from a marketing standpoint? Are there any channels you're taking advantage of, or how are you actually driving velocity at retail?
There is not one single answer to that, Kyle, but I think it's the combination of all of our marketing activities, in addition to feet on the street and boots on the ground. And so, I think the key thing is to come with a solid promotional calendar once you open up a new region or a new retailer. And the promotional strategy has to be dialed in. You have to drive trial there. So, you got to budget that trade spend high the first year in order to do that. And then, we go DSD in the Northeast with Rainforest. I think in this case, the market just demands DSD if you want to win in the Northeast, and that's the reason we did it. But then we have boots on the ground, so we have sales rep per region that is going out there and working the account, building relationships to get off shelf displays that drive visibility and drive trial. And then we pair that up with demos, coupons, cashback coupons, and then we do seeding with key influencers and events in that region. And I think the combination of all of that, doing it consistently week in and week out, you start seeing the results. After we have penetrated that region of Whole Foods, we start penetrating around a bit, and so we go to the tier two chains, if you will, in that market, to start creating ubiquitousness.
Yeah, it's I hear you on not one single thing, and I previously was in beverage years ago at Red Bull and
Yeah.
managed the New York City market, and the feet on the street ground game is the piece I think gets most overlooked by people who aren't squarely in the beverage distribution world. It's incredible what you can get by sending a warm, friendly face behind your brand into a store week after week after week, you can get cases and pallets of this stuff on the floor. And it sounds like that's part of the strategy that you're deploying.
Absolutely. I mean, you walk into a Whole Foods in the Northeast, and many of them have pallet drops of Waku in the floor. And look, none of that, even if you have the best sales rep in the world, none of that is achieved if the product isn't selling and it isn't turning. But once you have a product that is turning, and that consumers like and are adopting, and that when they try, they come back, then that sales force becomes powerful by building those relationships in the store and start getting off shelf placement. And once the velocities are there, and your DSD gets behind you, then is when the magic starts happening, right? Because your sales force is multiplied by many, and so that's the equation that you wanna get in order to start scaling up.
Yeah. That's great. And I can hear I could feel the excitement, the energy coming through in your voice. And I know that when did you start this company? 2018 or 2019?
Yeah, I would say the first year was 2019.
2019. All right. So you are 5, 6 years into this thing. How are you feeling now versus the previous few years? Open-ended question.
I, you know what? We've never felt more confident and more excited of where we are as a brand. So, we have a Whole Foods expansion coming. We're wrapping up our round of funding. We have new authorizations. We're just open up Unify. We're launching GoPuff. We're launching QVC. Our Amazon business is growing. Our margins are great. I mean, we've never had such a good business before. And so for the past 2, 3 years, we've been obsessed in building a good business, one that doesn't burn a hell lot of money, and that at some point soon can be sustainable. So when you have to go out and raise, you raise from a position of strength. That's the whole thing behind us. Is like we want to stop burning money, and so we're gonna get to profitability by the end of 2026. I think that both Nico and I have, if you will, our superpower is grit, as you said. So, we haven't come this far to only come this far, and we've never had a business like this. And so now, when we look at the business, the fundamentals are so strong, we just can't stop thinking on how this would look like once we are fully funded and continue to replicate the playbook that worked that well. And so we're bullish of what's coming for Waku, number one. We're bullish of what's coming for the category, number two. And then from a personal standpoint, I think both Nico and I have been continued to evolve and grow as entrepreneurs, and we just fell in love with the process more than the result. And so I think that this is an opportunity for us to become better and better as businessmen, and we take that process to heart, and we love getting better at it. And I think that if we continue to do the things that might be boring to other people, but we just do them day in and day out, we will win the game sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and it's I'll say we're rooting for you. It's a really interesting story, and props on what you built. I know how difficult it is to even get to this point and stay in the game. So you're 6 years in. We'll call it that. Let's look forward to the next 6 years and even beyond that. I don't know if you have a long-term goal with this business or if you're planning to exit when the time is right, but how do you think about that of balancing the long term versus the short term?
We have a plan to be 100 million in sales by 2031 and target an exit then. And in order to get there, we just need to double every year. That's it. And so we've never felt more confident that that is achievable based on how the business is shaping up, the partners we have involved, and where the category and consumer are going. And then, we we have certain cycles in our business that allow us to look at the business from a tactical standpoint and then from a strategic standpoint. And so we have a quarterly retreat where the core team goes out for 3 days and just take a step back, understand what happened previous quarter. Did we hit our OKRs and our goals or not? and reconnect with the mission, the purpose, and the goal, the long-term goal. 5, 10 years from today, where will the brand be? And that helps. That helps. Sometimes you end the quarter and you're, for the lack of a better word, you're burned out just because you've been heads down executing like a monster. That helps us pull the brakes in and remember where we're headed, how we're gonna get there, why are we doing what we're doing, are we having fun, do we have to tweak certain things to start having fun again? And then, you know, semi-strategic, semi-tactical is the monthly business, monthly strategic meeting, we call it internally, the quarterly retreat, monthly strategic meeting, and then we do the weekly team meeting with the team, and that one is tactical. Is, what are you going to achieve this week? What happened last week? And so I think that has been really good. That rhythm and that cadence of meetings with the team has been really good to keep us grounded in the execution, but also looking forward to the vision and the long term goals.
There you have it. So it's all that simple. Double the business every year, hit 100 mil by 2031, and then trust the process. So
That's it.
it's awesome. Big fan of what you're doing. So thank you for coming on and sharing the story. And yeah, Juan, we're all fans, and we'll be rooting for you. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate the time, and big fan of Paper Adventures.
Thanks, brother. We'll chat soon.
Thank you, Kyle.